I never thought I'd see his face again. Not after what he did. Not after the way he stood there in that boardroom, smiling like he'd won a damn Oscar. For my work. My name's Darren Clark, 32, project manager, and someone who's spent the last 10 years clawing his way up from nothing. I wasn't handed this life. No Ivy League degree, no family connections, just grit, long hours, and a willingness to keep my mouth shut when others took credit, until I met him. Eric Maddox, my old manager, my mentor, or at least that's what I thought he was. Back then I was working at a mid-tier tech firm in Chicago. I'd just landed the biggest account of my career, overhauled a failing logistics platform for a Fortune 500 client. 2 months of 12-hour days, weekends lost, meals skipped. I poured everything I had into that project. Blood, sweat, and sleep deprivation. And then, when it was time to present, Eric stepped in, told me the VPs were short on time, and he'd handle the pitch. I didn't push back. I trusted him. I stood outside that glass-walled conference room, watching through the frosted panel as he walked them through my work, slide after slide, line after line. He was selling my blueprint like it was his personal vision, and they ate it up, applauded. One of the execs even called it career-defining. He came out afterward, clapped me on the back like nothing had happened, and said, "You're going places, Darren. Keep it up." The next week, he got promoted. 2 months later, he was gone, recruited by some Silicon Valley startup. And just like that, all the bridges were burned. No credit, no acknowledgement, nothing. I left the company soon after. Couldn't stomach being in the same building, where I let someone rob me blind without lifting a finger to stop it. Fast forward 18 months. I've rebuilt. New company, better title. I lead my own team now, an actual team, where credit is shared and voices matter. Life was good again. Stable. Then last week, my director walked in and said we had a strong candidate for our new VP of product. Someone with great leadership experience, strong technical background. He handed me the resume to review. Eric, goddamn. Maddox, same smug smile in the LinkedIn photo. Same buzzwords. My stomach flipped. The room went cold. I don't remember setting the paper down, but I do remember the way my fingers curled into fists on the table. My ears were burning. This wasn't just a job interview. This was a collision course. He was walking straight into my world now, and I had a choice to make. Let him stroll in and steal again, or finally stand up and take back what he'd stolen. I couldn't sleep that night. I just kept staring at the ceiling, replaying it all. Those months of killing myself to meet deadlines. All the times I stayed late while Eric networked with execs. The way he always seemed to be there when it was time to take credit. But never when the work actually needed doing. Now he was back, trying to walk into my company, my team, like the past never happened. Like he hadn't sold my sweat as his brilliance. I dragged myself into the office early the next day. The halls were quiet, just the hum of servers and the soft tap of someone typing in a corner pod. I needed air. Space, anything to clear my head. But even as I tried to distract myself with the sprint schedule and budget breakdowns, his name was everywhere. On the interview schedule, in HR emails, in Slack threads about the promising candidate. My director, Maria, even asked if I could sit in on his second-round interview, give feedback as someone who'd worked with him before, worked under him. That's what she meant. I gave a tight nod. Said I'd be happy to. But inside, I was spiraling. Part of me wanted to pull her aside right then and tell her everything. The theft, the lies, the way he climbed over me like I was just a rung on a ladder. But I didn't. Because how do you prove something that happened in a meeting you weren't even in? How do you expose someone who's polished, charming, and leaves no fingerprints? That's when the strange things started happening. First, it was a Slack message from an old colleague, Lana. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but her name popped up like a ghost from the past. Lana. Hey, saw Eric's interviewing over there? Just a heads up. He's got a reputation now. I stared at the screen. M.E. Reputation. Lana. Yeah. Rumor is he took credit for work at multiple places. Our friend Kyle from StratEdge said Eric pitched his prototype last fall, claimed it was his own. Almost got sued. My blood ran cold. I picked up the phone and called Kyle. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Did Eric steal your work?" There was a pause. Then Kyle's voice, low and bitter. "He changed the slide deck before the presentation. Rebranded everything with his name. Our CTO believed him. I didn't have screenshots. No proof. I left 3 weeks later." My throat tightened. The pattern was too familiar. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a method. Eric didn't just take credit. He collected it, like trophies. He moved from company to company, coasting on the brilliance of others and wearing it like a tailored suit. But still, none of it was hard proof. Just whispers. Just stories. Stories like mine. And here's the worst part. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was just bitter, if I'd somehow misunderstood, or let my ego get bruised and twisted the truth to make myself feel better. I pulled up the old project archive from my last job. I still had it saved on a private drive. Every mock-up, every wireframe, every line of code comment. My name was stamped all over it. I dug deeper, searching through old emails, Slack logs, Trello boards. I found timestamps, audit trails. Then I remembered something, a line I'd used in the technical strategy document. It was unique, a metaphor I was proud of. Like replacing the engine of a jet while it's still flying. I Googled it. There it was. In an interview Eric gave on a podcast 6 months ago, bragging about his leadership in enterprise migration. Word for word, my metaphor, my damn line. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. This was no longer just a grudge, no longer a question of perception. This man had built his entire career on other people's backs, and now he was about to walk through our doors and do it again. But if I was going to stop him, I needed more than just anger. I needed a plan, something airtight, something that couldn't be brushed off as bitterness or office politics. Because Eric was good, too good. He knew how to work a room, charm a panel, and leave everyone smiling while he picked their pockets clean. He was coming, and this time, I wasn't going to be the one left in the shadows. This time, I was ready to fight. I didn't say anything at work, not yet. Not until I had something that couldn't be denied, ignored, or spun. But inside, the storm was building. I started combing through everything I had. Old files, saved chats, even my project pitch drafts from 2 years ago. I'd been smart enough back then to keep backups, even if I didn't fully know why. Some small part of me must have known I'd need them someday. It wasn't just the metaphor anymore. I found the exact architecture flowcharts I'd designed, labeled in my style, from a folder I'd created called V3 Recovery Plan Final. Then I remembered that Eric had told me to send him a clean version of the deck before that infamous presentation. For formatting, he said. I did, like a fool. I opened the deck he presented, which I'd managed to quietly download from the company server before I left. He had scrubbed my name, my notes, my diagrams were still there, my exact work, but with his initials at the bottom of every slide. And there, in the metadata. Last modified by Eric Maddox. Original author, Darren Clark. My heart pounded. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. I was done being angry. I was focused now. I copied everything. Screenshots, metadata, backups. I zipped them into a folder and named it Project Ghost, Receipts. Then I reached out to Lana again. She didn't hesitate. Whatever you need, Darren, I'm in. We jumped on a video call that night, her background blurred, her voice low and urgent. Listen, she said, I didn't want to say it in messages, but Eric's been leaving behind wreckage everywhere. He plays the long game, gets close to junior staff, lifts their work, keeps the execs dazzled while he erases the real talent. She had examples, emails, Slack threads, even a private message Eric had sent her at our old company, one where he told her not to share a prototype design because he would be presenting it. He claimed he didn't want too many cooks, but it was her design. She still had the time-stamped files to prove it. That was enough for me to go one step further. I looped in Kyle, who I barely knew but shared a kind of unspoken alliance with now. He'd been quiet at first, but once I told him what I was doing, he didn't hold back. About damn time someone stopped him, Kyle said. I'll send over everything I've got. And I know someone at his current company. They're pissed. Turns out Eric took a bonus for a project he barely touched. Each new message felt like a brick in the foundation I was building. Piece by piece, the picture was becoming clearer and damning. But I wasn't going to rely on whispers alone. I needed something formal. I remembered our old company used a project management system that kept document revision history, even deleted comments. I contacted a friend in IT over there, someone who owed me a favor after I covered for him on a blown deployment once. It was a gamble. He emailed me a week's worth of logs. What I saw made my stomach twist, but it was gold. Eric had logged in the night before the big presentation and edited the slides I uploaded. He deleted every comment that referenced my name, then replaced my summary slide with one he wrote using my bullet points, word for word. But the log had it all, time-stamped, irrefutable. It was solid, it was real, and now it was mine. I started planning, not a revenge fantasy, not some public ambush, a strategy. First, I prepared a clean, documented timeline, how the project was developed, who contributed what, and how Eric's final presentation aligned almost perfectly with my original design. Then, I added the testimonial notes from Lana and Kyle, keeping them anonymized at their request. Next, I reached out to Maria, my director. I asked for a one-on-one meeting, casual, no urgency. I just needed a few minutes. She agreed. When we sat down, I kept it calm. "There's something I think you should know before we move forward with Eric Maddox," I said, handing her a folder. Her eyes flicked over the pages, then she looked up. "This is extensive. I didn't want to bring this to you without evidence," I said quietly. "But this isn't just a personal grudge. This is a pattern. He's made a career out of deception. I've collected what I can to show that." She didn't say much, just nodded and said she appreciated my discretion. But I could see it. She was rattled. Later that day, she looped in HR. I wasn't told what happened behind those closed doors, but I got a calendar invite. Eric's final interview panel was still scheduled, but now I was on it, and so was Maria. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. Because this time, I wasn't just a guy trying to protect his pride. I was a witness, a fighter, and I had every receipt. The interview room was glass-walled, modern, sleek, corporate, perfection. A rectangular table sat in the center, surrounded by 5 ergonomic chairs. I chose the seat closest to the door, deliberately opposite the chair designated for the candidate. Power positioning. I wanted him to see me first when he walked in. Maria sat beside me, calm, unreadable. HR rep to her left. 2 senior product leads across from us, both reviewing their notes, completely unaware that this wasn't going to be a normal interview. The door creaked open, and there he was, Eric Maddox. Same polished smile, navy blue suit, a hint of gray at his temples now, but still the same smug sparkle in his eyes, like he was already 3 steps ahead. He paused when he saw me. "Darren," he said, feigning surprise. "Wow, I didn't realize you were here." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms slowly. "Neither did I, but I'm glad I am." He gave a soft chuckle, like we were old friends who had shared too many late nights and too many secrets. Maria stood. "Eric, welcome. Please, have a seat." He did, adjusting his cuffs like he was getting ready to accept an award. "Pleasure to be here. This company has such an exciting trajectory, fantastic leadership, innovative culture. I'm genuinely honored to be considered." The first few questions were generic. Leadership style, product philosophy. What would you do in your first 90 days? He had polished answers for all of them, stories carefully curated, experience dramatized just enough to seem heroic. He was the picture of composure. Until I spoke. "Eric," I said calmly, folding my hands on the table, "do you recall the Greenpoint migration project back at Calix Tech?" His eyes flickered, just a second. "Of course," he said, with that practiced smile. "One of our best wins, great teamwork. We overhauled that system in record time." "Right," I nodded. "And who would you say led the technical design of that project?" He hesitated. "Too long?" "Well, leadership is often collaborative, Darren. I think we all played a role." I slid the folder across the table. "Because according to this, Every component, from architecture to deployment, was designed by me. Your version of the presentation removed my name, rebranded my diagrams, and used my original strategy, doc, verbatim. Metadata confirms the edits. There's also a timeline, including testimony from 2 other former colleagues. Would you like to see the logs? The room went dead silent. Eric's jaw clenched so tightly I could hear his molars grinding. Maria raised an eyebrow and opened the folder. The other panelists leaned in, pages flipping, a quiet exhale from HR. Darren, Eric began, his voice dipping. This isn't really appropriate for... I agree, I interrupted. It's not appropriate. Neither was what you did at StratEdge, or SolNet, or Talana, or Kyle, or me. I turned to the panel. This isn't a personal vendetta. It's a documented pattern. He has taken credit for others' work at multiple companies. I have proof from each. Eric stood. This is a setup. Maria closed the folder calmly. No, Eric, this is accountability. You're going to believe him over me, based on some folder full of biased anecdotes? Not anecdotes, I said, standing now too. Evidence. Emails, revision history, colleagues. You built your reputation off of other people's silence, not anymore. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. He looked smaller, cornered. His eyes darted between us, calculating. You're just bitter. You always wanted the spotlight. I leaned forward slightly. No, I wanted credit for my work. The spotlight can blind people, but truth sticks. Eric turned to Maria. If you believe this smear job, then clearly this place isn't for me. He grabbed his bag. You're making a mistake. Maria met his eyes with steady calm. Thank you for your time, Eric. We'll be in touch. He walked out without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft but definite click. The silence lingered. Then one of the product leads spoke. Holy hell. Maria looked at me. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I wasn't sure anyone would believe me, I admitted, but I couldn't let him do it again. She nodded. You did the right thing. That took courage. The meeting ended quietly, but the undercurrent was electric. I'd walked into that room prepared to risk everything. My reputation, my peace of mind, maybe even my job. But I walked out free. No more questioning myself. No more wondering if I'd imagined it, if I was being petty, if silence was safer. I took a stand, and I watched the thief finally walk away empty-handed. Word spread fast. By the end of the week, Eric's candidacy was withdrawn. Quietly, of course, HR handled it professionally. But in our world, silence is noise. Everyone knew something had gone down. I didn't gloat. I didn't post vague victory tweets or leak it to industry gossip forums. I just kept my head down and did my job. But people noticed. Some came by my desk just to nod. Others messaged me things like, heard what you did. Respect. The most surprising part? A junior developer from another department, Tina, slipped me a message after a team meeting. She said, thank you. I was in a situation like that once. I didn't say anything. I wish I had. You gave me hope. That hit harder than I expected. And Eric, well, a week later, I heard he'd been let go from his current firm. Apparently, word had reached them too. There was talk of a legal review since bonuses tied to work he didn't actually do were now being scrutinized. The internet is forever. His name started popping up in quiet whispers on LinkedIn, posts with words like integrity, teamwork, and truth always surfaces. Nobody named him, but everyone knew. His perfect reputation? Fractured, not obliterated, but cracked enough that no one would see him the same again. And me, I felt lighter, not triumphant, not joyful, just relieved. Like I'd finally laid down a weight I'd been dragging for years. Still, not everything was easy. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have let it go, focused on my own growth instead of looking backward. Part of me still carried that old guilt, that second guessing that comes from being gaslit by success in someone else's name. But every time I felt that doubt creeping in, I'd open that folder. I'd look at the timelines, the metadata, the names of people who stood with me, and I'd remember this wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. Eric had built a career by silencing voices like mine, people who were too polite, too scared, or too unsure to speak up. I broke that cycle. I didn't do it for applause. I did it because someone needed to. Because the next person he stole from might not have had the strength to fight back. Because even when no one's watching, we know what's right. Justice didn't come in flames or fireworks. It came in the quiet satisfaction of finally being seen. A month later, things settled into a new kind of normal. The tension that had hovered over my shoulders for years, like a ghost I could never quite name, was gone. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I wasn't the same guy who stood outside that glass conference room 2 years ago, watching someone else take a bow for my work. That man swallowed his pride and told himself to stay quiet, that it would all work out in the end. That man doubted himself, questioned his worth, measured his value based on who noticed. But now, I don't wait for recognition. I own my contributions. I speak up. I advocate not just for myself, but for the quiet ones in the room, the interns with great ideas but no voice, the new hires afraid to raise their hands. Because I've learned something powerful. Silence may feel safe, but truth is where growth lives. Maria called me into her office not long after everything with Eric went down. At first, I thought it might be a debrief, some HR formality, but instead, she slid a folder across the desk. Leadership development program, she said. You've got the instincts, the grit, and more importantly, the integrity. We need people like you at the top. I stared at the folder. My name was on the front. I won't lie, my throat tightened. All those years of grinding, feeling invisible. And now I was being seen not just for my output, but for who I was. I accepted. Around the same time, I reconnected with Lana and Kyle, this time as friends, not just allies in war. We've since talked about starting a support circle for folks in tech who face similar erasures, a place to share, document, and support each other. Because what happened to me? It wasn't unique, but the silence around it was. At home, I sleep better. I laugh more. My partner tells me I'm lighter. You're not carrying the anger anymore, she said one night as we shared dinner on the balcony. She was right. I'm not. The anger served a purpose, for a while. It pushed me to seek truth, to stand up. But I've learned that healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from reclaiming your voice and using it to build something better, not just for yourself, but for everyone coming up behind you. Now, I walk into work every morning with my head high. I know what I bring to the table. I know what I've survived. And most of all, I know what I stand for. Eric Maddox is a name from my past now, a cautionary tale. But he doesn't haunt me anymore. He was the storm that taught me how to build shelter. And now I'm building something even stronger. You never forget the first time someone steals something you can't prove was yours. Not an object, not money, but something deeper. Your effort, your ideas, your voice. And when it happens, you question everything. Was I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Should I have worked harder, spoken louder, demanded more? But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the person who hurt you. It's easy to play humble, to convince yourself that justice is petty, that recognition isn't worth the fight. But that's not humility. It's fear dressed up as grace. And fear lets the wrong people win. Eric taught me that. Not through wisdom, but through the wreckage he left behind. He was the kind of man who rose fast because others stayed quiet. He knew how to weaponize charm and wear other people's brilliance like his own. And for a long time, I let him win. I let him walk out with my work, my credit, my future. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. Because dignity doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from standing up, even when your hands shake, even when you're not sure anyone's listening, even when it's easier to walk away. What I found on the other side of that confrontation wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I saw who I was when everything was stripped away. I wasn't just the guy with good ideas. I was the one who could defend them, protect them, honor them. And that, more than a title, more than recognition, is what real strength looks like. So, if you're reading this and thinking about the moment someone stepped over you, know this. Your story isn't over. Your truth matters. Even if no one else sees it right now, you do. And that's the first step to being heard. Stand your ground, speak your name, own your light. Because sometimes the people who try to erase you are just afraid of how brightly you shine. And once you decide to stop shrinking, they'll never be able to steal from you again.